Hello, guys. You're watching the Football Diary podcast, a week full of cheer for Chelsea fans. Thomas Tuchel's Blues ended Man City's dream of a quadruple, which is great news for everybody else who wants to see a competitive football environment. Winning 1-0 over them in the FA Cup semi-final. And that win came soon after a 2-1 aggregate win over Porto as well, sealing a place in the semis of the Champions League for those. Also in Europe, City came from behind really well, actually, in Dortmund to win 2-1 and kept on track with a 4-2 aggregate victory there. Phil Foden stealing the show, which was great to see. And Erling Haaland actually pretty quiet for once. It's the first time Pep's been in the semi-final of the Champions League with Man City, so a bit to digest there. Liverpool were out after a 0-0 draw with Real Madrid, so losing 3-1 overall. Bayern beat PSG 1-0, but it wasn't enough to beat Mauricio Pochettino's men. 3-3 on aggregate sees PSG through, so pretty tight one there. And Bayern coach Hansi Flick stepping down at the end of the season now, which is interesting. And then in Europa League, United and Arsenal both progress. They could meet in the final, which is tasty. But first, the semi-finals need to be dealt with, and they're shaping up to be narrative central pretty much. With Roma versus United, first of all, you've got Smalling and Mkhitaryan on the Roma side, which is going to be pretty interesting to see. Probably got a point to prove. And speaking of points to prove, Unai Emery is facing his old Arsenal counterparts in the other semi-final. So loads of definitely tasty ties there in the Europa League. But what have we seen from the European competitions in this week's games? We've got the semi-final lineups now. They're looking pretty tasty. We're not surprised because the first leg's pretty much decided most of them. But I'll start with you, Myles. What were your highlights from the European games? What did you take away from them?
I think the first thing that is worth noticing is England are going to win the Euros now, based on these European games. Jude Bellingham is the new Zidane. Phil Foden is obviously going to be the one lifting the trophy. Now, I think that is, as much as a joke, I do think that is a point to consider. Young players stepping up on a big stage. Like you said, Foden dominated the tie for Man City, really. And I thought Bellingham was outstanding. Now he's not affiliated with Birmingham City. I'm happy to say that I think he's an absolutely wonderful talent. And I think he's going up in everyone's estimation. It was a big week for him. He scored his first Bundesliga goal and then scored his first Champions League goal as well. So that was fantastic. The other thing I think I took from this week was Arsenal being Arsenal. Just all of a sudden, out of nowhere, they showed up and put in an incredible performance that you would imagine those players to be capable of. They had a point to prove. They did it. And then today dropped points to Fulham and looked like they were going to lose until a very, very late Nketiah fox in the box kind of finish. So I think they were the two things that I looked at. The young English players shining. Roma nearly letting me down, but coming through. And,
that was a tense one.
And Arsenal having a really good week in Europe.
Arsenal being Arsenal. Did you see the reaction to some of the Arsenal fan TV cameras that were placed on them during the equaliser against Fulham? They were cheering and recording it on their phones like they'd secured like a Champions League win or something. It was incredible how the mighty have fallen. You touched on Jude Bellingham as well, Myles. He was it Pep Guardiola after the game said, this guy must be lying about his age. He's not 17, surely not. Phenomenal performance from him. John, what did you make of the European games? And did Bellingham stand out for you, or was it Foden who kind of really caught your eye?
Yeah, I like what Myles was saying. As just said, got to agree with him there. One thing I liked about both of their performances was that Bellingham, when the ball kind of come to him, it looked like it's going to stumble over his feet. He had the composure as a 17-year-old to touch it out and curl it into the corner with enough power that Ederson could only palm it like still into the net. So that's, I mean, props for that. It's absolutely superb. Foden as well. For his finish, he beat the keeper at the near post, but he just hit it with so much venom that, I mean, fair play. The celebrations meant a lot to the whole club, you could see, really. So I enjoy footballing moments as, you're watching a game as a neutral, you want to see good matches. Had a good few goals. Man City went behind, had to push a little bit. We're still very patient. But Bellingham and Foden stand out. And maybe England will win the Euros, Myles. But I think that we've been here a few times with England where we've had a lot of talent coming through, and it just depends whether they can gel correctly or not, as we've seen in the past. It doesn't really happen. But sticking in Europe, fair play to both of them. The young lads are only 3 years apart, and they put in some pretty just superb Messi and Ronaldo-esque performances, and the teams need that player to rely on. They both stepped up and done the business. A bit unlucky. And like I said, Haaland was quiet. So fair play to Bellingham for being the youngest player on the pitch pretty much to deliver some goods. So, yeah, really, really nice to see. Really competitive and enjoyable goals as well.
Yeah, it was, go on, Myles.
Sorry, can I just say quick? I've seen everywhere about Haaland being quiet. I think one caveat that should be added to that is Haaland being quiet for Haaland's standards in the Champions League in terms of he didn't score. But actually, both the goals that Dortmund scored across the two legs, Haaland contributed to quite heavily. For Bellingham's goal, that comes from him basically just bossing the centre-back. I think it was Stones, might have been Diaz, can't remember. Yeah. But that run was just perfect, and he controlled the ball so well. And in the build-up to Royce's goal in the first leg as well, that was Haaland's work too. So I think we saw a lot more of the other side of Erling Haaland. We know he can score goals. We know that if you put him in the box and give him an opportunity to shoot, he's going to do something. A club like Man City, who might be signing him, don't just want to see that from their striker, though, do they? And I think we actually got to see the other strengths of his game this week quite a lot.
The ugly side of the game, doing the work you don't get recognised for quite clearly.
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
Well, he did the job that he needed to do, and I think he played part in the goals that he doesn't normally have to play when he's the main source of goals for the team. But he laid it off pretty well. He wasn't particularly quiet in front of goal in that respect. His movement was still there. He was still dominating. But I think the defence of Man City played really well. Stones was tested. I'll be interested to see how someone like Stones gets on against PSG. That would be interesting to see some pace there going up against him. But 4 English teams across the 2 European semi-finals, both competitions rather, it is looking pretty good for England, English players, English teams in general. So are we too early to get excited, Dave? Are we going to see an English 1-2 of winners of European trophies like we did a couple of seasons back?
I hope not.
I'm guessing you'll take one though, right, Dave?
Yeah, obviously.
just don't say anything else, Dave. That's it, mate. You're done.
I mean, it's not been all doom and gloom. Obviously, City have gone out of the FA Cup this weekend, so it's a good start. But yeah, I think in terms of English talent coming through, it's a good sign, and it bodes well. I think for the summer it will definitely give Southgate something to think about. The young lads playing this well, and obviously you've got the likes of Sterling, who sort of lost his way a little bit. Last few games, he's not been starting some games as well. Because he had a bit of a shock against Chelsea yesterday. Yeah. So it'll be an interesting one to see how that one plays out as well for England. But yeah, I think in terms of that particular game, I think City just had a little bit more know-how. I know it sounds a bit daft because they have bottled Europe a few times over the last few years, but I think the experience from the more experienced players kind of got them through it a little bit. They just had the quality at the right moments in the game to finish the game off, really. And once they scored that goal, it was kind of game over. Anyway, back after that.
Question here from Chris, who's watching on Facebook. Myles, I'll ask you first. Have the performances of some of the England youngsters in Europe this week changed any of your views on the Euro selections from a few episodes ago? Good question. What are your thoughts on that one?
Yeah, it is a good question. I think the one that's the most obvious is Bellingham worth a start? And I don't want to sound like, because we saw it on TV, now we have to think about how good Bellingham is. He's done well for Dortmund a lot this season, but when you do see it on that kind of stage, when you see it against that kind of opposition, it does make you think, wow, that kind of cultured performance I wasn't expecting from a 17-year-old Jude Bellingham. So I thought the Euros might come too soon for him to be starting games. I look at that and think, with England's centre midfield issues, Rice is injured at the moment. We don't know whether he's going to be fit. Henderson's obviously been injured as well. There's a space, and I think he's definitely one that's gone, look, I can do this, so he's worth a shout. Other than that, I don't think so. I don't want to be too reactionary to a couple of good performances. Like you say, it was good to see Stones perform well as well. But I think Bellingham's definitely the one that's put himself most in the conversation because Southgate already loves Foden, doesn't it? Yeah. Yeah.
Dave, any thoughts on that as well? I mean, for me, I think, like you say, Jude Bellingham was always in my conversation anyway. I think I put him in my Euro squad, so, head of the game there. But Dave, what are your thoughts? Any changes for English personnel for the Euros based on European games.
I think the only thing with Bellingham is how Southgate fits him into his team, and we know Southgate's quite a safe manager. He plays a lot of tried and tested, and is he going to get enough out of those two ties? It's two fairly average teams, isn't it? We're playing. I can't remember who it is now. Is it Romania and somebody else? Two warm-up games?
It's been that long since the draw was made. I couldn't even tell you.
The Euros, I think they got two warm-up games. I think one. I can't quite remember who they are, but I think it'll be risky to start him. But yeah, like I say, you definitely get a role from the bench. Would be good to see if we need a goal and we need someone who's creative, who can, kind of offer that little bit of quality in the final third. Definitely, I think he will play a part. I think it might be a bit of a risk to start him straight away. Like obviously, and you've got to take into consideration have we got enough in those defensive midfield areas. If you're playing him in there and you're throwing him in with, if he drops out, you're not going to take Grealish out of the team. You're not going to take Foden out of the team ahead of him at the moment. No. So yeah, it begs the question: where's he going to fit in? I think in terms of what we were speaking earlier on I think not last week, week before, and was saying Mason Greenwood playing well, was come alive at the right time, right part of the season again.
True.
He got 4 goals in his last three games, and he's with his second goal today probably got a little bit fortunate with that deflection, but he's been unlucky on countless occasions. Is it woodwork? I think he's showing that part of his game. He gets shots on goal, and at the end of the day, if you don't shoot, you don't score, and that's what we need. Really, we need goals. And I think with England as well, sometimes I think we struggle a little bit in open play. I think, especially obviously saw at the last World Cup. I know. We're changed a lot since then, but we've gotten over reliance on set pieces, and we need to score more goals from open play. And I just don't think it happens enough.
Anytime you mention that World Cup, though, the smile still comes on my face. I don't care if it was set piece merchants. I remember watching the England-Tunisia game with you, Dave, in a pub in Leicester. And when Harry Kane scored that late goal, we weren't caring where it came from.
No, it was a terrible game, but yeah, right result in the end.
Anyway, to bring you back onto European football again, England we've done. John, have you got a response to Chris's question as well? Has anyone in the England fringes or in the England setup changed, in your opinion, in their sort of ranking for where they start or whether they don't?
No, I think the guys have summed it up quite well. I mean, Southgate is quite safe. He does like the players that he normally picks. So managers like headaches. They've always said that as a bit of tongue-in-cheek, where if people hit a bit of form, and then it gives them potentially the selection dilemma of who do I bring. But I think that, as Myles was talking about the injuries and bits and pieces, there might be some people that are either going to lack some match sharpness or be injured and not be able to come or be ready for the game, like second or third game. He's got to be real with himself, and if that's the case, just not take him and go with someone that's hit a bit of form or blood some youngsters like Bellingham. I think he deserves to be in the squad. Whether he starts or not is another question, but I think he should be there, or at least on backup, so that if someone like Henderson, Rice, they don't make it, he's there to fill in or help with rotation or whatever it might be. So yeah, I've got no issues with someone like that coming in, but I think the guys have summed it up quite well. He'll stay safe and probably be on backup or something, I'd imagine.
Staying on you, John, your thoughts on the winners of the 2 European competitions? Have they changed at all since these games have been played?
No, you've got to grind out results sometimes. I didn't actually mind the Roma game because they showed a bit of steel and determination to get over the line, and I think that's a pretty good character for a team that's looking to build something this season, so fair play. And then I think I went for PSG or Bayern. There's a separate question around the away goals. That might have been a different result if they do end up changing that over the next couple of years. But no, I think PSG have just got, a lot of scary quality. And when you look at the teams that are still in the mix, Man City have, as someone's already said, bottled it before at different times around this kind of stage, or not even getting to the semis. So you've got to think that maybe there'll be something in the back of their minds when they're playing. They've been playing for all 4 competitions. Yes, they're winning the Premier League comfortably, but they're still, look at the rotation against Chelsea. They didn't win the game. I think they made about 7 changes versus midweek, which doesn't do a team any favours. But they're playing more games than pretty much any other team. So, I mean, something's got to give somewhere. And unfortunately, rolled the dice, didn't quite work out. I quite like, with the Roma Man United game and Arsenal Villarreal, they have got history. You mentioned Mkhitaryan going against United again, as well as Smalling. And then you've got Emery against his old club, and his record for semi-finals is outrageous. I think he's out of 7, he's won 6. So I am a believer in a bit of fate. So if I was a betting man, I'd actually say that Villarreal and Roma will go through to the final, just because of the history between the teams. Of course, this could be completely wrong, but you've got to play your cards somewhere. But normally, there's a game that sticks in my mind. This is so long ago, and it wasn't Europe, but it was Southend, a local team to me, against Man United, and they had a guy up front called Freddie Eastwood. And he just scored like mega goals. Southend won 1-0, and Freddie Eastwood scored. And it just seemed to be like written in the stars for whatever reason that would happen. And I believe that happens a lot in football because there's history in both ties. I believe that, I'll go out and say it now that Roma and Villarreal go through.
You know, I felt similar to when there was a prospect, I think it was a couple of seasons ago, when United might have faced Inter in the Europa League final, but they got knocked out in the end, I think. But they would have faced like Lukaku, bang on form, and it looked like a tasty matchup. What were you going to say there, Myles, by the way?
On that, John touching on history as well, can you remember the last time Roma and United faced in Europe? United beat Roma 7-1. Yeah. Daniele De Rossi just scored this outstanding goal, and no one will ever think of it because it was such a shame. So you never know, man. There's something to hold on to there for Roma. The players might all be gone, but they'll remember that result.
Staying on you, Myles, actually, have you got any change of opinion for the winners of the competition? And also, just a word for Chelsea, they've had a week, haven't they? They dispatched Man City in a really, really comfortable way. I thought they defended superbly, and they're looking increasingly difficult to score against. And I mean, it took a wonder goal from Porto to even get anything past them in that time. But what a goal, So, is your opinion changed on the European favourites for you, Myles? What do you reckon?
I don't think it has changed. I was never very settled on my Champions League winner anyway, but I actually think PSG played better in this game than they did in the first leg, which is bizarre because they lost this one and won the first one. But I saw more from them that made me think they're a bit more canny. They look like they know how to go out and win the game. Di Maria, it will hurt you to hear this, I'm sure, but Di Maria was outstanding in that game. And I thought for him to not even be the third name you think of in that team a lot of the time says a lot about the quality that they've got going forward. I do think Chelsea have an odd chance. Tuchel is a very smart manager. He got PSG to the final last year, and he'll know how to set up. He will, and he knows PSG well too. So I will be interested to see if they can get past Madrid, but I do think it'll be PSG still. I just think, like you touched on earlier, anyone with a bit of pace going against John Stones is asking for him to make a mistake. And when you've got the pace of Mbappe and the footwork of Neymar, like that seems like a rest. I'd consider playing Laporte in that game instead, to be honest, just for that sort of risk-free nature. And as far as the Europa League winners, I'm sticking with Roma. I am nervous for the United.
Surprise!
I'm nervous for the United game, I'll be honest. But like John said, the Ajax game was shaky at times. When Ajax had the second goal ruled out, I was nervous because that would have been tie done. But they got through it, and that's a lot. And that could be enough to galvanise you to go, do you know what? This is in our favour now. It might be a bit written in the stars. And Edin Dzeko popping up with a goal, that's what you want to see. He's always going to be that man to do that for them. So their Serie A season's pretty much over. They're 7th now. And Juventus lost again today, by the way, which is always interesting. So this is all they've got now. And I do think they'll push. I'm hopeful.
On that note, Roma aren't the only team in the competition who are putting everything on the Europa League. Arsenal have got Newcastle to play for as well. Literally Europa League or bust for them, isn't it? So, Dave, can you see United Arsenal final, first of all? Would that be the worst scenario as a United fan to play another Premier League team in a final? And what's your sort of opinion on the winners potentially of both European competitions?
Yeah, like I already mentioned about, I wouldn't really fancy playing Arsenal in the final. And it sounds daft, but we've not. I don't think we've beaten them in the last 2 years. So they've just got this little hoodoo at the moment. They seem to turn up a little bit more, I think, against the big clubs, and that's a bit of a small club mentality, isn't it? Now, really, you see small clubs, rolling over for, against smaller teams, and then all of a sudden against the big clubs, they want to turn up and they want to play the game of their life because they're playing, I don't know, they're playing Man United, they're playing Liverpool, they're playing Man City. But it seems a bit odd with Arsenal because at the minute they've got a lot of inconsistencies, as we've seen earlier today against Fulham, and they're a bit all over the shop. And also, like you mentioned earlier, what I was mentioning a couple of weeks ago, I probably wouldn't like to play them. Do I think? I don't know. It's a mixed bag, aren't they? You just don't know what team's going to turn up.
I'm changing my opinion on the Champions League now. I said I thought Man City would take it, but it's their defence. I just can't see them facing these boys.
I think it's an interesting one, the Champions League. You don't. I think it's all to play for. There's no clear favourite because you think of one team, think, oh yeah, they could win it. But then you think, actually, this team might not suit this team. Obviously, Myles was just mentioning Chelsea and saying they've got a chance. I agree with them because it's a bit odd. Like, I don't find Chelsea that attractive to watch at the minute. But when they play, Tuchel's a very systematic manager. He's got his teams are well structured. They defend well. They've a clear way of playing and getting results, and you can't really argue with what he's done with Chelsea since he's come in. He's got results, barring that ridiculous game against West Brom. But he's come in and seemed to have got a well-drilled unit. So it'd be fascinating to see if they get past Real Madrid. Real Madrid at the minute have got ridiculous injuries to their defence. They've basically got no defence. They play tonight at 8 o'clock, I think. So it'd be interesting to see what their lineup is in defence. But I think virtually their whole first choice defensive line are out. So if Chelsea face a makeshift defence, then they could go through against Real Madrid, and it could be Chelsea versus.
I was going to say that, Dave. Nobody's mentioned Real Madrid in the conversation about winners. In fact, I don't think that's the first time anybody's mentioned them in any way so far tonight. So, what's Real Madrid's prospects for the Champions League, and what do they look like at the moment? What kind of form are they in?
They were in brilliant form before these injuries, and that's put a little bit of a dent into their end of season prospects. Really, it'll be interesting to see how they play out, and I'm sure they'll be itching to get a lot of their defenders back. Obviously, we saw that Ramos missed the Liverpool games, and they'll want him back in there because he's a real leader for them. I think they might can't see them winning the Champions League, but stranger things have happened after seeing Chelsea win that Champions League in, was it 2013, when they had that absolute ridiculous look in the semis and the final against that Barcelona team and Bayern. Like, stranger things have happened. So,
it's a tough one to call, isn't it?
I can't take a team and say this team's going to win. You could say PSG or Man City are going to win it, but you don't know, do you?
No. I could see Chelsea getting to the final and just shutting up shop and then just hitting on the counter and a jammy, like, flick off the shin from Kai Havertz or something from a corner, which would be infuriating because I'm one of these people who doesn't like seeing other English teams win European competitions. I'd rather someone else win it, anyone but United, basically. But no, the European ties are pretty tasty. I'm going to move on to the Premier League now. If you have got anything else you want to say.
Yeah, before you move on, can I just say, I think Real Madrid might be being, and this is such a weird sentence, Real Madrid are underrated. But if you
see what you mean. No, I see what you mean. They've pulled it right back into some kind of title challenge now.
Yeah.
Which at Christmas, Atletico were running away with it, and they've, to their credit, scrapped away, and now they're the team to beat, I think, in La Liga.
I think that's half to Real Madrid's credit and half because Atletico Madrid have been really inconsistent. But even with those, Dave's right, they've been really struck at the back. They beat Barca last week, and they just knocked Liverpool out the Champions League. Like, they're doing all right. I saw a stat the other day that Zidane has won more European titles than he has lost games, lost knockout ties in the Champions League.
Crazy.
Like he could be on for his 4th Champions League already.
Yeah.
Like that's mad. That is.
Yeah, he's underrated. People don't rate Zidane still.
It's weird. It does come to something when Real Madrid are the plucky underdogs and the good guys of the semi-finals, the only ones without the oil money. Like, it's a bit sad, isn't it? But I do think that maybe we're overlooking it. Can I also suggest that anyone watching, if you want to play a fun game, we can play Dave's Digs Bingo or a drinking game of some sort. Because so far we've had Arsenal have got a small club mentality. Man City like to bottle the Champions League. Various Chelsea downfalls in a week that we've just said is good for him. I'm just waiting to hear what he's got to say about Liverpool at some point.
No, I think you should see Dave when United have lost. My God, you can't stop the guy, honestly.
So anytime Dave moans about another club, have a drink. That's my.
Mike, about Real Madrid. Just touching back on quickly.
Go on, then.
What they lack of previous years. I know it sounds silly, but if they had Ronaldo in there, even at his age now, he's not, lighting up games like he used to. I think in terms of a finisher, and he doesn't get the chances at Juventus as that he did at Real Madrid. He got them served him on a plate, and he was, he's still one of the most technical strikers around, even at his age.
Very true.
He could have made the difference for Real Madrid, but they don't. They've got Benzema, who is kind of the go-to guy for them, really. But if he doesn't turn up, it's a little bit sort of who's going to stand up and take on the responsibility.
They've got a lot of young players in their front line.
They are losing a figure there, really. I think Real Madrid, and that's what there's a lot of rumours now that Mbappe is going to go to Real Madrid next year. We'll see what happens with that.
I will add as well that Leicester are winning 1-0 against Southampton in the other FA Cup semi-final. Iheanacho on 55 minutes, so that's looking tasty as well. I'll start off a Premier League roundup. There's only a few games in the Premier League this week. I think most of them were moved because of the funeral of the Duke of Edinburgh. So I'm going to start with West Ham. Keep it short, John. Come on. But a decent comeback in the end. I think to lose a player and to go down like they did, but to still try and have some element of potentially getting something out of the game until so late, really, is quite impressive. I thought they fought back pretty well. What did you make of it?
Yeah, it's a bit of a weird one. They actually played differently to how they would normally play and had about 68% possession, I think, by the end of the game, maybe 65, and were down to 10 men, which you would expect to be totally the other way around. So there was definitely a gulf in quality in the teams, but I mean, 2 calamitous goals in the first half, and then that sending off, just a bad touch. And then he's gone to lunch with the ball and got a second yellow. So nothing you can really complain about. And they just didn't turn up for whatever reason. Where Everton and Newcastle have been West Ham's kind of bogey teams over the last however many years, where you'd think you kind of be there or thereabouts with them, but they just don't play and end up losing, 2-0, 3-1, something like that, end up getting a scrappy goal, but rarely do they do all right against them. So you can see Moyes has fired them up at half time, be like, look, do what you can do. The backroom staff, Nolan, whoever it is, Noble in there as well. And they come out, played with heart, played with passion, got a goal with 20 minutes to go. And I think any team, you fancy your chances then, even if you're down to 10 men. Team's galvanised, you're pushing for it, got a penalty, VAR, handball, which was one of those ones that probably, a few years ago wouldn't be given, but his arm was in an unnatural position. So, it gets given. Lingard bangs it in, you think, okay, take a point now, like absolutely amazing. Terrible first half, fantastic second half, and then gets one cleared off the line from the resulting cross, they then score, and that's it, done then. So it's a bit of a bittersweet performance, a lot of stuff to get stuck into. Where I was saying about West Ham fans being fickle over the last podcasts that we've done in the last 6 weeks or so, they were first half giving it to the team. They're not good enough. They're rubbish. Can't believe this. Like just kicking off. It's just classic West Ham fan base, unfortunately. So I think that with that, they're always going to struggle. Nothing will be good enough. They can finish 4th, 3rd, and I'm sure people are still complaining. But for whatever happens, be a fantastic season. Finished above Arsenal, probably Spurs as well. I mean, you can't argue with that. And a bit of a weird performance where sort of happy, but also disappointed and frustrated. There you go. A frustrating performance.
Well, have you now ruled out top 4? Is that still something that could happen in your eyes?
The issue we've got now is that we'll have to beat Chelsea and hope, or even get a draw, and hope that they then slip up if they're in the FA Cup final, with one eye on that, and Champions League semis. That I don't want a player to get injured or anything like that. But if there's a bit of squad rotation, or they have a bit of a dip in form, we just got to hope that something like that happens. Or Leicester, if they go through, and good luck to them for you as well, Mike. As your home team, so to speak, in the FA Cup, if they go through, then maybe they'll be putting their eggs in that basket. It's bigger than finishing in the top four potentially. So I'd rather have a trophy. If as a fan, I'd rather have the FA Cup as a piece of history than finish in the top four. So
fair enough. No, I think most fans would probably agree with that as well. Myles, Villa not in action this weekend, from what I remember, but Sheffield United relegated. It kind of seemed inevitable, but rewind 12 months. It's a different prospect altogether. They look like a different team. Was it a case of them overperforming last season massively, or has something shocking happened to them this season?
I think there's a mix of both. I think actually you want to say 18 months ago it seemed foreign, because 12 months ago, after lockdown, they just didn't turn back up really. Because there was talk this time last season, in terms of this stage of the season, that Sheffield United were going to push on for European spot. Yeah. But after lockdown, they didn't really do much. I think there are a few things. I think one of the fine margins is Dean Henderson. Obviously, he had a fantastic time there. And not having him there has easily made their defence worse. Aaron Ramsdale's not the worst goalkeeper in the world, but he started quite slowly in particular. Their defence picked up a few injuries as well. They've had quite a few, to be fair. So that's been kind of inconsistent for them. And I think Wilder said it quite a lot, and it's probably been noted quite a lot, that they won a lot of games last season on very fine margins. And on those same margins this season, they seem to lose games. So it's a bit of, they kind of used all of their luck up in one season, and then it just was gone. I don't think they did very well in the transfer windows. They brought in Sanderberg last season in January, and he's a decent player. But you look at the money they spent on Ryan Brewster now, and you think he was scoring goals in the Championship, but was it too early to spend all of your transfer kitty on him and make him your star signing? Because he hasn't done anything really.
It was a very un-Sheffield United thing to do, and I think that's the reason why Chris Wilder lost his job, from what I hear.
Yeah,
Brewster signing, whether he disagreed with it or whether it was his signing, I can't see Chris Wilder wanting to spend that much money on someone like Brewster, unproven in that kind of team and at this level. So it's gutting, because Chris Wilder was the right coach for Sheffield United.
Yeah, I don't understand.
There's no one better for the job.
So I don't understand why they got rid of him. I don't understand when they got rid of him. At that point, it was pointless. No one was going to keep him in the league. And look at Burnley, when they went down, they kept hold of Dyche, and he rebuilt them. And now they're pretty established. They're having a bit of an off time at the moment, but yeah. And Norwich have just been promoted again because they didn't get rid of Daniel Farke. They thought, well, this is the right man for us. He's the one that will get us up there again, so we'll keep him. I just think with Sheffield United, there must be something going on behind the scenes there. I think they changed ownership a couple of years ago as well. Yeah, and I think Wilder was quite keen on the fact that he didn't want a director of football there. So obviously there's more to it than just the results were poor, therefore he's gone. Although the results were shocking. I don't know, they were a bit of a boring team even last season, really, weren't they? I'm not that sad to see them go.
They were massively overperforming, I think, and that's the crux, really, isn't it? It's going to come back and bite them. I think all their stats, their XG was being outscored massively and things like that, and they were just seventh at some point.
Classic Blackpool syndrome.
Yeah.
What's the other thing to look at is who from that Sheffield United side now will get bought by a Premier League club next season. I can't think of anyone.
Probably Sanderberg's the standout.
That's it.
Yeah.
Other than that, would you take anyone else?
It is a championship level squad. I think a lot of pundits earmarked them in their first season to go straight back down at the bottom of the Premier League. Yeah. So it's almost like they've reverted to type, really, in some ways.
I could see someone like Norwich, I think, a team that likes to play, and
he was dealing with Liverpool at one point.
Yeah, he's been linked with United as well.
Yeah, he has. Yeah, talented player in the wrong team. A bit like Brewster, really. You'd like to think Brewster's got a future somewhere.
He's there next season.
The next game, Dave, I'm going to speak to you about United quickly, if you can, because we've just watched them beat Burnley pretty convincingly 3-1. Mason Greenwood on the score sheet twice and another Cavani goal. Thoughts on United quickly?
I think they made it difficult for themselves again, as they like to do. There was stages in the game. We came out of that second half and we got the goal, a brilliant goal to see. And, I was over the moon for all like 2 minutes. And then and there was basically a replica of one of, I don't know how many goals we've conceded the same like that this season. The only strange thing is in the reverse fixture, obviously Maguire scored that goal earlier in the season, the header from a corner. And he basically, where he just sort of like touched the defender on his back and the defender on the floor. And we got it ruled out for basically a fingertip on his back because the referee had blown up for a foul. And then VAR looked at it and somehow came to the conclusion it wasn't a clear and obvious error when, you can't put your palm on a defender nowadays. You may as well just all go home. It's ridiculous. I thought Tarkovsky's challenge was more of a foul than that one.
Yeah.
Still, we don't want to see challenges like that given as a foul because at the end of the day, football is a contact sport, and I just don't want to see challenges like that given as a foul. It just brings up all of the attention on our defence again. Though we seem to at times just get bullied by Chris Wood, and it's Chris Wood, and they're playing with one striker up front, and he's occupying both Lindelof and Maguire. We need one of those, our centre-backs needs to be the one that comes in and intercepts the ball. Actually, that's what Bailly does. I know he can. I
was going to say, he's probably better suited to this game, weren't he?
Got moments in him, but he does actually come in and try and dominate the striker. And neither of Lindelof or Maguire doesn't really have the pace to do it. He tries to do it at times, and Lindelof is a little bit apprehensive.
Or after his performance in the week, maybe give Axel Tuanzebe a game today. That would have been a nice outing for him. I think he'd have done all right.
It would have been. I think in terms of you've only got one striker to play up against, and another thing begged the question today while we're playing two defensive midfielders, and Ollie obviously reacted to that in the second half and brought on Cavani for Fred, which I think was about one of the. He's not really made any sort of like proactive decisions like that this season, where he's made a change at half time. He's normally left it until 70, 75 minutes or until it's too late, and we're kind of like chasing the game. So it was good to see that, and Cavani came on and provided a lot of mischief for the opposition. We kind of penned them in that second half, and they didn't really know. They didn't really have an out ball. It just went straight back to us, and we kind of recycled the ball. Obviously, Greenwood is looking like he's the go-to man at the minute for goals, and it's good to see. Like, at the end of the day, we still don't want him to be the guy we need to rely on for goals because we need a central striker. But every United fan knows that if Cavani goes, we need a striker. But yeah, like I say, it was a bit of a nitty gritty victory in the end. Probably a little bit more handsome looking than what it was. We did look like we were coasting in that second half a little bit. It looked like it was drifting. We were like, well, are we actually going to decide to go on and win the game? Thankfully, we did. So yeah, I've not really got anything to moan about. Whenever you're winning, you're happy. You're a happy man.
Yeah. Well, I think the title race is just an 8-point gap now, so we have a title race on, right, John? Surely. It's tense now, surely.
Man City have only got to lose the next 3 games.
I don't know, they're out of form at the minute.
Dave says he's got nothing to moan about, and I think he's by talking about the last fixture, let Maguire off massively lightly. That was shocking defending. The reason it's not given as a foul is because Maguire doesn't contest the ball. Maguire looks lost, and how your centre-back can look so lost from a corner against Burnley of all people.
He's just too easily bullied. I think him and Lindelof are just not. I mean, they're quite big guys, but they're bullied and physically bullied from set pieces far too easily.
He stood still, and he looked round like he didn't know where the ball was going. And so Tarkovsky just jumped through him.
A little bit out of like all at sea as well from corners. I think Wan-Bissaka actually had a half decent game today. To be honest.
Why do you hate Wan-Bissaka?
It's out positionally sometimes. He does get caught out of position, and it's normally in that back post area. But today he actually did make a few crucial clearances. So it was good to see him. I think that's probably one of his better games today than he's had for a while. So I mean, it's still early days, and things people keep saying about Dean Henderson, and he looked a bit ropey at times in that game, or Wan-Bissaka. It's still early days. Like these are still young players. Like when De Gea came in his first 2 years for us, he looked like everyone thought at United, he's not the right guy. He's not good enough. He's not got the physique for the Premier League. He's not gonna, he's just not what we need. And you've just got to give some of these players time at the end of the day. Like Henderson still only had 1 year of Premier League, one year in his career of the Premier League, and obviously he was in the went out on loan a couple of spells before that in League One, and you've got to give him time, and the same for Wan-Bissaka as well.
Yeah. So title race is on though. Yeah, we all agree. No. Well, the relegation places have pretty much been decided. Sheffield United are down, but I think Fulham now look dead and buried. Newcastle looks safe, which is boring to say. So sadly, it looks like relegation has been decided quite early on. Champions League is still looking tense, though. There are a few things still to play for in the Premier League, but with 6-7 games left to go, it looks pretty decided, doesn't it? So on that note, I'm going to move on to the hot topic of the evening. Breaking news while United were actually playing this evening that the European Super League that's been talked about for years might actually happen. There's 11 teams, including 6 from the Premier League, who look like they're trying to form their own league independent of any other competition, which has got Gary Neville an absolute outrage. He was fuming, it's fair to say, about the prospect of his club just basically ignoring all their history to go, do you know what? I fancy this little closed club where we can all play each other and earn billions of pounds in the process. What's going on? Is this actually going to happen? Myles, I'll start with you. I mean, is this something that could actually go ahead? Is the European Super League something that you'd like to see? Would any fan like to see? Or is it just a massive middle finger to all of us?
I've thought for the longest time that it just couldn't happen and that it was mainly being used as a bluff. But it does seem that the richest and the most elite clubs are just trying to just throw their weight about now and dictate the pace of things. I think back to when they were talking about the bailout for the lower league clubs, and Premier League clubs' first proposal was, okay, we'll give you the money, but we now get to decide everything. And that sort of mentality is showing again now. Essentially, it's, if you don't give us what we want, we'll throw our toys at the pram. I still kind of think it's a bit of a threat and trying to find ways of negotiating more power for those clubs, which again is ugly. And I really hope it's not the case. I just don't see what the point is. No. You want a competitive league, and I feel like it's so out of touch with what the point of it all is. If you take your fixtures and spread them across Europe, are you thinking about your fans there?
No, not at all.
I just think it's a really selfish mentality, and I think that it would be what would be the point or the fun in any domestic league anymore? If the Premier League all of a sudden was all the current teams, bar the top 6 or the 6 big teams, you wouldn't feel like you'd won it when you win it. It would take everything away from it. I think as fans, I want to see my team competing in those competitions year on year. That's the tradition in the history of every football club. And to just go, do you know what, you guys will just watch whatever we put in front of you. It's just massively insulting to all of us. I don't want to watch a closed club of 11 Premier League, La Liga and Serie A teams, isn't it, that are in it. That'd just be really boring year on year. No relegations, no threat of going down, just the same 11 teams or potentially more, always playing against each other and getting richer and richer. That's just unwatchable. From what I understand, it is more. It's just that the 11 teams so far have come forward and said they support it, but the invitation will extend to more. So I think the likes of PSG, Bayern Munich will be invited in eventually, depending on whether they come forward and agree with it. They may have already. I don't know who the 11 clubs are, to be honest.
So there's 6 for the Premier League, and they call it the top 6. But I mean, they're talking about Tottenham being in there, Chelsea and Arsenal. I mean, I'm more fuming, like Gary Neville, that the clubs of the calibre and history of United, Liverpool are up there considering this kind of proposition, because that is a huge middle finger to history and tradition. And going, do you know what? We don't want to win any more European Cups. I want to go for this special one-off money-spinning competition and win that. That's just disgustingly rude and arrogant. And I think I can't see any way back from this if it does happen. I can't see them going, do you know what, this Super League's not working out. Let's go back to the Premier League, because they've already said, we're not having you back. If you want to leave and break away, that's up to you. I think FIFA, UEFA have all said any players that stay with their clubs and do this aren't eligible for international duty, aren't eligible to play in World Cups, European Championships. So they've basically said, it's all or nothing for you guys. If you want to break away, great, brilliant, have fun. But don't expect any other perks that any other club and any other players getting. Do you know what? Fair play to them. And that will really force their hand. John, what's your thoughts on that?
I'm glad you just mentioned that about FIFA because I didn't know that was a thing. But I quite like what Gary Neville was saying. I mean, obviously he's human, but the way he puts it makes perfect sense about history, local fans, doesn't mind people investing money in football clubs. Like he's done it with Salford as well. But it's got to be done in like the right kind of way. I mean, fair play for Chris saying as well that he's appalled. It just doesn't really make any sense. Like, what are you going to... It's just for the then elitist football fans that aren't your local... I've been supporting this club for 40, 50 years, 30 years, 20 years, 10 years, whatever it is.
It's a plastic competition.
At the pub. It's literally like the people with their Learjets and whatever that in the hangar that are multi-millionaires that are then football supporters. Of course, they can be and will be. That's how you're going to get turning up to these things. It just ends up being like a massive ponce fest. I just don't like the heritage and stuff. That's what makes football. And there's another way of looking at it, that you have to evolve things and they have to change to get bigger and better. But this isn't the way of doing it. And every other competition surely then loses a bit of merit because you're not necessarily going to be watching the world's best players, or the World Cup could be missing, like your Ronaldos and Messis of the time. So like Haaland, Mbappe, Salah, whatever it might be, that are playing for these big clubs. Like Arsenal, really big club.
Well, it then begs the question about whether these players still want to play for these clubs in these circumstances. I mean, if you were currently playing in your final years as a player for Juventus, as an older Cristiano Ronaldo, thinking, one more Champions League, and they're going, well, actually, mate, this is the competition we want to go for now. Are you going to want to stick around and stay with that? Probably not. And like John said, who's going to go to the stadiums on these huge, long journeys to watch his team play away and watch these games? It's going to be just very, very rich, wealthy people. So who's winning out of this?
I think actually,
what's your thoughts quickly there? Because we ain't got much time.
Oh, sorry, turn to me. In my opinion, I think it is a joke. But in terms of, you've just got to say, I was just thinking, like, what teams are accepting it? And obviously, I heard about all the teams that are listed. There was no mention of PSG or Man City, and I just thought, well, what are they doing? Is there a moral decision behind this? And I heard that obviously Chelsea are in it. I thought, was it sort of like an FU to UEFA for not kind of putting those FFP guidelines into place and being more strict with these clubs, because they just they let Man City off with that 2-year ban. They just
that is ridiculous.
Here's some money under the table. We'll give you a pass, and we'll see you in the competition next year. It's just ridiculous. And then there's obviously, it's all coming out now that these big clubs like PSG, Man City will potentially be part of this. It isn't, is it? It's just a big, let's put all these matches up for auction, and the stadium, with the biggest bid, or the buy with the biggest bid, can have it in Abu Dhabi, and let's buy that.
That's what we go to, though. That's a good point, mate.
At the end of the day, it's just not an attractive prospect, and what's going to be next? Start raffling off the last 10 minutes of a game to the highest bidder who can go and join in a game 10 minutes. Someone out of the crowd, go and jump on for 10 minutes. Let's have 20 million for that. It's just,
you can see it happening, though. It doesn't sound like it's completely unrealistic.
Thing, I don't want to become too extreme here, but it's getting like that in boxing as well. They're starting to have all these stupid YouTuber fights in professional boxing, and like gaining hundreds of millions from these stupid exhibitions. And we don't want that. At the end of the day, football fans, it's the last thing we want. We want these traditional competitions that we've all grown up loving and seeing, and suffering the highs and lows all the way throughout. It's just not something that everyone wants. And as for the players, don't get me wrong, they're going to want to play in the biggest games. So if they have to play in those games, they're going to play them because they want to play against them.
Surely it's not. You say about the biggest games, though, because I was thinking about that as you guys are talking. Surely it's no bigger than the Champions League. Like, if that's meant to be the pinnacle of European football, something that's new and fresh, like that surely doesn't trump it just because it's got more money. People are still going to want to win the Champions League and have that in their medal and trophy cabinet when they retire, you know. So I don't
really will for some though, won't it? I think that's the point. This is more geared up for the older generation of players, I hardly think. I think it'll almost become like a Masters tournament if it happens. Players like Rashford, for example, Manchester United through and through, but is so young that does he want to devote his entire career to one tournament? No, of course not. You mentioned Ronaldo, though. It's another trophy he could add where he will think the world's eyes are on this, so I'll be there.
I don't know, you know, what about his legacy? I think he's quite keen to protect the way he's looked at by history, you know. So I think if he was willingly taking part in a competition like that, that would make him like an absolute idiot, wouldn't it?
And you're telling me he doesn't like, just like Pele and all his friendlies.
You don't like him? You don't like the sound of European Super League champion? That's Ronaldo written all over it. I'm surprised he's not the ambassador for it.
I don't know. Well, we just saw a message on the screen from Chris again saying, you know, what about the players' rights? Do they have a say in this? I would say probably contractually, maybe not, because, you know, they've got to see out the contracts with their teams. I'm sure legally, every league that's going to be affected by this and teams leaving those leagues will have something to say. I'm sure it's not done and dusted yet. I'm sure it's far from that. I don't even know where the news broke from, whether it was a club or UEFA or FIFA or someone.
It's quite disrespectful as well because I think UEFA were actually looking to announce their plans for the restructuring in the Champions League.
Yeah, expansion.
That's why this has come out.
Yeah.
Essentially, all this will do is those clubs are trying to force through a way that they make more money out of the Champions League. They want a longer Champions League, more games so that they can make the most commercial revenue off it. So it's very convenient that this has come out now, like, oh, we might leave. It's just the negotiations. It won't happen. It's just them going, all right, do the Champions League the way we want it or we'll go. And I'll be interested to see who caves.
Well, you say that, but interestingly, from a fan's point of view, the sort of mini knockout tournament we had to finish off last season's Champions League was much better to watch. Much more exciting. You know, one leg, single knockout, total elimination. That was amazing. If they could get back to that, fans would be happier. But no, they'll bloat it to a 32-team, probably 2 group stages like they did back in the day. Do you remember that? That was a hideous competition to watch because it lasted forever. I think they did the same with the Europa League as well. They had 2 group stages for a while. It's just unwatchable. But they'll do what they need to do to make more money, and I just hope it doesn't actually go ahead. I always thought it was something that was there as a scare tactic or something that they thought, do you know what, I'd love for this to happen for the benefit of the European elite. But if it does, I'm sorry to say, it'd be the death of a lot of football clubs, my own included. So it would be tragic, and I echo Gary Neville's anger really, that his club and my club are willing to even contemplate it. Poor Solskjaer got questioned on it after the game today. He couldn't really say anything, could he? But I wanted him to just go, it's a load of rubbish, you know, this shouldn't be happening. But you can't because he's being paid by them. Myles, you're going to them.
John, I reckon West Ham would get top 4 in the Premier League then, though, maybe. And who knows? Could be great.
On that note, guys, I'm going to sort of bid farewell to you all now because I think we've exhausted that as well. But some wicked topics tonight. Thanks a lot for your time, guys, and thank you for watching. And we'll speak to you all next weekend. Cheers, guys. Thanks a lot.
See you next week.
Take care.
Bye.